Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey. I am joined by three of the families who lost loved ones on Pan Am 103, Brian Flynn, Mary Kay Stratus, and Eileen Walsh. Senator Gillibrand is on her way here and got caught up in a flight and now in traffic, so we hope she can make it, but she asked me to proceed. We are here at Times Square, particularly because this is the last location in which an attempt at terrorism took place in the United States. And it is a vivid reminder for us that we are in a constant challenge in our fight against terrorism. And our efforts to get to the truth about the Pan Am 103 bombers' release is part of that effort. This week, it is my intention to chair a hearing on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to examine the release of convicted terrorist Abu al-Bassat al-Megrahi from a Scottish prison some 11 months ago. It is a hearing that Senator Gillibrand, also a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, will join, and that my colleagues, Senator Lautenberg and Senator Schumer, have called for. The four of us have made it clear the abundance of incredible coincidences surrounding al-Megrahi's release deserves a real, open, transparent hearing. Full information regarding the most dubious aspects of a decision to release him should be made public. And a cloud of suspicion will hang over the entire issue, at least until all the looming questions are answered. To this end, the hearing provides a prime opportunity for us to get more information, and for those who are suspected of having a role, it provides an opportunity to answer questions that will set the record straight. And that is why I have been particularly disappointed by the lack of cooperation from those who have the most to answer. One of the biggest questions hanging over al-Megrahi's release is whether a conveniently timed oil drilling agreement between BP and Libya, supported by the British government, factored in. To that end, we have asked to testify both BP's CEO, Tony Hayward, and its liaison between the Libyan and British governments, Sir Mark Allen, a former MI6 intelligence officer. BP has not made known if their officials will in fact testify, but they have made it known that their deal with Libya, like Mr. al-Megrahi, is very much alive. The company announced this weekend that drilling along Libya's coast will begin in the next few weeks, allowing it to cash in on a $900 million deal. Add to this the reasons that we need answers soon. Once the oil starts flowing, the answers from BP will be slow to trickle in. Now, I understand that Mr. Hayworth may be in the process of negotiating his golden parachute to leave BP, but that does not excuse him from the request for his participation. Considering that BP is responsible for what has happened in the Gulf, and that this hearing is to help ensure justice in the murder of 189 Americans, 38 from my home state of New Jersey, should BP choose to avoid this hearing, I don't think it will be taken kindly by the American people. It also is of real concern to us, a letter that we have now had access to, which I believe we circulated to you, by one of the members of the British Parliament, who also was the chairman of the Libyan British Business Council, who also happened to have, that organization also happened to have BP as one of its members, that was sent to the Cabinet Secretary for Justice of the Scottish Government, Kenny MacAskill, in which it urges Mr. MacAskill to ultimately release al-Megrahi in either a prisoner transfer agreement that the British government was striking with Libya, or to use his powers of compassionate release as another provision. And I think that reading some experts of this letter make a compelling case why the hearing is so important. It says, I write as a member of the British House of Lords, but as it also happens as chairman of the Libyan British Business Council, which has a number of Scottish members who are also anxious concerning the case of Mr. al-Megrahi. It says, I urge you to bring this matter to a swift and satisfactory conclusion. If the prisoner transfer agreement is your preferred course, then Mr. al-Megrahi will have to withdraw his appeal and notify the court accordingly. He goes on to say, I am reliably advised that he is in principle ready to do so. And presumably the Crown, the British government, is also ready to abandon its separate appeal relating to sentence. He goes on to say, I appreciate that this process may be unattractive to you for one or more reasons. In that case, I invite you to consider another route, a route that is open to you, namely release on license on compassionate grounds. And then he goes on to say, may I end by emphasizing the speed is of essence, principally, of course, for humanitarian reasons, but also because of the shadow which may otherwise fall on the UK-Libyan relations, and especially the interests of the LBBC, the Libyan British Business Council, Scottish members, and indeed others, signed by Lord Tricofan. So the bottom line is, I know that Mr. McCaskill has said that he never had any contacts with BP, but this letter, of which BP is a member of that council, asking him to do this, raises just another question. In addition to the silence from BP, the limited amount of cooperation with the hearing from the British and Scottish governments has been unfortunate. Kenny McCaskill, the Scottish Cabinet Secretary for Justice, and Dr. Andrew Fazer, who headed the team that gave the diagnosis that allowed al-Megrahi to be freed, have declined their requests for them to testify. The doctor was part of a panel that supposedly said Mr. al-Megrahi was only going to live for another 3 months. Well, he is still alive, well past that, and some independent reports say that he may very well be alive for another 10 years. We'd like to know how you could get it so wrong. Jack Straw, the former British Justice Secretary, who is now a member of Parliament, has also declined. Instead, their governments have battled the issue back and forth. Scotland defends the integrity of the release, but blames the British government for wanting al-Megrahi as part of a prisoner transfer agreement. And the British government claims the decision to release al-Megrahi was entirely up to Scotland with no undue influence. It seems to me that we are playing a game of diplomatic tennis worthy of Wimbledon. All that does is reinforce suspicion that there is much more to this story. My hope is that those members of the British and Scottish governments who we have called upon to help us get to the bottom of this issue will reconsider their reluctance to testify before the committee. I certainly understand they don't feel compelled to give answers to a foreign government. They are not bound to do so, and maybe that is not a common practice, but this is not a common case either. For one, their public statements have all denied undue influences on release of al-Megrahi. If that is so, then testifying before the committee would be an opportunity to erase all doubts. But beyond that, the issue at hand and why we are here at this place is one of terrorism, national security, and international justice. Let's remember why we are pursuing this line of inquiry. And I hope those who we have called to testify will remember as well. This is not about an abstract, trivial foreign policy matter. 270 innocent people were murdered in a terrorist attack. 189 were American. It was a mass murder. We have to ensure fundamental justice, both for these families who have lived a real-life horror story and for our national security, so that no would-be terrorist can look at this case and think they too can kill scores of Americans and get away with it. Our administration has shown an understanding of that, and I appreciate our government's cooperation to this point. We are working to secure administration witnesses who have expertise on the al-Megrahi release from a U.S. perspective, and we also expect our requests for U.S. government documents to be honored. But it seems clear that the primary information and insight needs to come from our allies in the United Kingdom. Right now, there are far too many questions lingering and far too few of the people involved willing to give answers. This hearing would be the best venue to get many of those answers. Now, make no mistake, if cooperation continues to lag, we will continue pressing for information and we will pursue a variety of angles to get it. That is our commitment both to these families and to our interests in terms of national security.